So I think that given what's been going on in the last few days internationally, we should start with Iran.
Surprisingly.
I know, it's a shock. I guess I want to ask you your view of President Obama's effort to come to terms with Iran, to make a deal with Iran, how you feel that Prime Minister Netanyahu has been handling Israel's dissenting view of this. And I guess, well, let's start with those. What do you think that President Obama is naive?
Let me tell you this. I'm familiar with some who were presidents in the United States of America. Some of them passed away. Some of them are still with us. I can't say that I was their best friend, but I think I know them fairly well.
You were quite close to George Bush.
I'm very, yes, I think I can say I'm very close to George Bush. Perhaps I was one of the closest foreign leaders who were friendly with President Bush more than others. I haven't met yet someone who was elected president of the United States who is naive.
Okay.
No one can be naive and be elected president of the United States of America. And certainly no one who is Afro-American, first president of the United States who is Afro-American, who has gone through the kind of life that President Obama went, who will be naive. I mean, this is, I think, a ridiculous accusation. He may make mistakes, by the way.
Is he making one here?
I don't think so, but not think so yet. We will see what will be the outcome. I don't know. Of course, I mean, in Israel, no prime minister ever makes mistakes.
I know.
So don't draw a comparison between him
I'll try not to.
and any of the prime ministers.
Okay.
I don't talk about a particular prime minister in Israel. I also was a prime minister in Israel, and I never made any mistake in my life. But anyway, I think that...
So, but I mean, broadly, you think that the attempt to see whether Rouhani is serious is a worthwhile, appropriate endeavor?
Look, for years now, we had to go through this guy, Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad woke up in the morning and talked about atomic bomb. He went through noon and he talked about the liquidation of the state of Israel. And so he spent the whole day trying to build up the nuclear capability for Iran to be used, according to his own words, to get rid of the Zionist entity, which is the source of all evils.
Well,
okay, now...
I don't remember him ever saying that, but anyway.
Pardon?
I don't think he ever said he was going to use an atomic bomb on Israel.
No, I didn't say he said he will use the atomic bomb. I said that he said that we need to get rid of Israel.
True.
And at the same time, he was building an atomic capabilities, and he talked against Israel. So, I mean, it's for us...
You had reasons to worry.
Ethan, you know, for a Jew, I have to be very, very clear about this, because I may have differences of opinion about how we should handle this. But I have no disagreement with anyone in the state of Israel or any person, any place in the world who says that when a Jew hears a leader who says that the state of Israel has to be liquidated, that we have to take him seriously.
I hear you.
And we have to watch him, and we have to find out what he's doing. And if worse comes to worst, and there is no alternative, and no one else is doing anything, then Israel may need to use whatever power we have in order to prevent it. But we certainly have to listen to it very carefully.
Okay, but that's Ahmadinejad.
But that's
Now,
Ahmadinejad.
Rouhani.
Now comes a new guy. He is elected against, by the way, the desires of the supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei, who we know very well, didn't look at him as a first choice, not as a second choice, but as the fifth choice. He was elected president, and the first thing he does is he says, I'm ready to negotiate, changing the status quo. I'm ready to negotiate this, which is the most sensitive issue, not just for us, but for Iran as well, for different domestic reasons. And he sits with us, and I hear all kinds of stories. Some of them are very encouraging, some of them are not yet. But to say to Obama, don't even sit with them, don't listen to what they have to say, don't ask questions, don't try to give some incentives. Don't use the power of the United States of America to squeeze the Iranians in order to convince them that this is better for them to make a deal with us rather than to take a chance that they will be, who knows what, pay a terrible price as a result of their insistence on having a nuclear power. I think this is ridiculous. Of course we have to try it. The war, the use of power, I found out at a time that, at a relatively short time that I was Prime Minister, using power is sometimes inevitable. Try and make it the last resort, not the first resort.
Okay. So you think that Netanyahu is making a mistake to be speaking
Did I
as
talk
he does?
about Netanyahu?
I'm now talking about Netanyahu. Do you think it's inappropriate for the Israeli Prime Minister to be criticizing the president that way?
Well, let me try and
Well, you know what,
elaborate.
actually, I know that there's a kind of unwritten code where you don't go around yelling about your own prime minister when you're abroad, so that we don't have to go there.
No, I'm not
But
yelling about the Prime Minister of Israel whenever, even when I'm in Israel. I don't yell on the Prime Minister.
Okay. But
what I
as
want
a
to
matter of
say is, I
principle, you
understand,
thought it was inappropriate. It's inappropriate to criticize it.
First of all, I think that for almost every nation, certainly for the state of Israel, which relies so much for its existence, for its power, for its many different political and military advantages on the United States' goodwill, I think that the first duty of any Prime Minister of Israel is to be friends with the President of the United States. Now, you can agree with the President, you can disagree with the President of the United States. If you know how to build up these friendly, personal, intimate relations with the President, you can disagree with him. And I'm not supposed to speak about it, but there is one event which has been publicized about my relations with Bush, in which Bush advised me one thing, and I said, President, thank you very much. I'm a little bit disturbed about your position. I'll do what I need to do, and I did exactly the opposite of what he proposed.
This was the bombing of the Syrian nuclear.
I can't even comment on what you said
but
because
I'm just
we never
informing
talked
our
about
audience
it.
here.
But that's the point.
Right.
The point is that you can disagree with the President of the United States. Don't embarrass him.
Okay, let me ask you.
Don't provoke him. Don't step in the center of the world, on the most important arena of the world, and criticize the President of the United States. And by the way, don't teach him anything. You can assume that someone who has graduated Harvard with distinction, as President Obama did, he's not dumb, and he knows a little bit of history, and he knows something about the history of your country. Don't be arrogant if you don't need to, and I don't think we need to be arrogant with President of America.
Okay, I got it. Now,
Thank you very much, Ethan.
But what I want to ask you is this, because
I'll need you.
I'll be with you.
when I go back to Israel.
The thing that I found interesting is in those years that I was in Jerusalem, 08 to 12, most of which he was the prime minister. He had a very, very active campaign publicly to get the West, the United States and Europe, to focus on the nuclear endeavors of Iran. And you could certainly argue that he alienated a lot of people, but I want to ask you, because I think he also forced greater attention on it internationally and in Europe than it would have otherwise gotten. So that in a way, by being obnoxious, he did get results. Do you think I'm right?
First of all, you know, I wouldn't say that he was obnoxious, okay? Prime Minister of Israel is a very civilized and serious person, and he worries in a genuine manner, which can be understood, about the existence of the future of the State of Israel. There is a question, and I want to put this question not as a criticism or as a provocative comment about the Prime Minister of Israel, but in general, and maybe you can answer me or the crowd will answer. If you agree with this question, you can applaud and you can even give me a standing ovation, but you don't need to. Okay? Here is the question. There are two ways to convince the President of the United States. One is to go from every conference, from every stage, and on every podium, and make a public statement and say, America, Your duty is to destroy Iran. Your duty is to now take measures, very serious measures against Iran, and we warn you, you have to do it, and so on and so forth, and going on public, and making the American president look as if he waits to get orders from Israel, which I think is a problem for an American president, because even if American president wants to do something in line with what you say, how can he afford himself to be seen as if he is obeying the orders coming from Jerusalem? What will the entire world will say to him? President, you didn't think of doing it yourself? You had to wait until the orders will come from Jerusalem? Now, this is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to do the same, to come to him privately, to sit in the Oval Office, and to say to him privately, quietly, tete-a-tete, 4 eyes, ask everyone, President, may we stay alone, just the two of us? By the way, I tried this technique, and it always worked. Whenever I asked to be with the president in 4 eyes, he immediately agreed, and he asked his fellows, hey guys, leave me alone with my friend. And we stayed alone. And we talked about many dramatic and interesting things. No one ever heard about it. No one ever knew about it. No one ever could think that if the president said something, he said it because I told him to say it, or because I asked him to say it, or because I ordered him to say it. Now you can come to the president privately in the intimacy of the Oval Office and say to him, President, here's the situation. This is the fear that we have. This is the danger that we face. This is the possible ramification of we not doing anything against Iran. I leave it to you. I will not embarrass you. I will not challenge you. I will not provoke you. I will not make any public statement. But I want to tell you only one thing, President. That in 3 years' time, in the year 2012, I'm talking now about 2009 when Bibi became Prime Minister, if nothing will be done, then there will be left no option for Israel but to do something. But I will not embarrass you. I will not put you in a position where you will be seen or your behavior will be interpreted as if you're doing something because I asked you. I think that in such a way you can influence the thinking of the president and eventually his action much better than if you challenge the president of the mightiest nation on earth when you are, permit me to say, a country relying on this mightiest nation on earth, appearing publicly as if you are giving him orders.
Okay.
That's the distinction between these two options, and you can decide which one may be more effective on the long run.
Let me ask you about the turmoil.
With the quietness of the whole, you can see that they entirely agree with me.
I agree, absolutely. It's hard to disagree. I want to talk to you about the turmoil in the region. Yes. And the impact that has on Israel's security concerns and its efforts with the Palestinians. So there is one theory that says, oh my God, every place is blowing up around us. How can you expect us to try to cut a deal? We have to hunker down more than ever. And there's another theory that says, there's all this stuff going on around you. It is actually not about you. These countries are in some ways destroying themselves. If you look at Syria, for example, this is the moment to seize and set up an island with you and the Palestinians and perhaps Jordan of something that something more that the West can relate to more.
Ethan, let's try and make, since we are limited in time and we can't, analyze all of the different developments at some length, as we're used to do sometimes. Let's go fast from south to north.
Okay.
Egypt is in big troubles.
Okay.
For the next 10 years, Egypt will have to deal with internal domestic Egyptian problems. The last thing that they can do is to try and turn around and challenge the state of Israel or change the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt.
Right.
In fact, their dependence now on the international community is so big that this is the last thing that they will do. In other words, we don't have a danger from the south.
Okay.
Hamas is the weakest in its entire history, and the Egyptians, who tacitly cooperated with Hamas are now fighting with Hamas, killing Hamas people. Hamas is weaker than they ever were.
Okay.
This is in the
That's
south.
the south.
In the east, what was known as the Eastern Front doesn't exist anymore. There is no Iraqi army. No Iraqi army. Jordan is the best ally Israel has. The Palestinians, they don't even have jeeps, let alone tanks, let alone armored vehicles, let alone cannons, let alone whatever. So they may have some terrorist actions. We don't necessarily love terror, as you can imagine. We know how to fight terror, and we know how to fight terror better when we fight terror from within the borders of the State of Israel, which are recognized by the international community, rather than when we fight terror from within territories which the whole world considers to be occupied territories. So there is not an Eastern Front, and there is no terror from the Eastern Front, largely, not entirely, partly because of the operation of the Israeli security services, which are wonderful and very effective, but largely also because the Palestinians are not prepared to engage in terror anymore, and in the West Bank they are building administration which is very surprising in its efficiency and which is far better than we ever anticipated they can do. Okay? So let's not forget this. Now in the north, Syria is destroying itself. It will take more than 10 years before Syria can recuperate. And, we can go on forever, but you don't need it. And Hezbollah, I will say what my guy, my assistant told me before that I normally say at the end of the speech. But, what's his name? Nasrallah is still in a bunker. And believe me, he knows why. So Israel has never been in a better strategic position than we are now in. And there has never been a better time, more appropriate time, more urgent time to make peace with the Palestinians than now. That's what we have to do. We have to make peace with the Palestinians.
Okay. So that answered my question, and whether this is the right time to do it. Now, can you assess how these negotiations that are 3 months old have been going?
Up until now, they have been going.
And?
Nowhere.
Nowhere.
Nowhere. Well, that's what I hear. I'm not familiar with it. I'm not into
the weeds.
The intimate details. Mm-hmm. But look, I'll tell you what. Look, everyone knows, even in the New York Times, which normally hear about the new developments after the forward. Okay. But everyone knows precisely what are the conditions, what are the parameters upon which a peace agreement can be achieved. What Israel needs to do, what Israel expects the Palestinians to do, they know, we know, and the whole world knows. Now, believe me, and I'm also not naive, although I'm from Israel. We can make peace with the Palestinians within 2 months, no more. We all know what it is. They know what we can propose. It was proposed to them by me. For whatever reason they didn't sign, you probably will touch upon it later, so I don't go elaborate on it now. But we know exactly, they are ready, they are anxious to hear that we are prepared to do it. There is always in these negotiations the question of who blinks first, or who makes the first move. Because for some stupid reasons, when you make the first move, it may be interpreted, it may be perceived as if you are weaker, or you are more impatient, or you are more, you are less confident, and you want to race in order to achieve it. But this is ridiculous. We are talking about fundamental issues of great historical proportions, of great historical significance. We have to put it down, to say to the Palestinians, this is what we are ready to do. We have to then make it public if necessary, so that the whole world will know what we are for, so that the Palestinians will not be able to use their traditional rhetoric and say, Israel is, unable to move forward and whatever they say. And I think that they are waiting, and they are in a position now better than they ever were because of the weakness of the Arab world, because of the weakness of the Hamas, because of the weakness of the radical forces. Now Abu Mazen is stronger than he ever was. And if he says that he was so close to make peace with me, what we need is someone that will squeeze both sides so that they will meet. That's all. And we can do it. And we need to do it.
Now, he did not accept what was often termed your generous offer in the end of '08. And he's had a range of stories about it. And to some extent, I think your description of what happened has gone up and down a little bit too. But the truth is that, what you say is reasonable, but it's also true that every time it comes down to it, whether it's sharing Jerusalem, whether it's the right of return, whether it's emptying out certain settlements, one side balks because although in theory it's this incredibly important thing, somehow day to day life seems to go on and people don't have that sense of urgency. You have it, but most Israelis don't share it. Am I wrong?
I'll tell you something, not only most of the Israelis, but most of the international community for whatever reason. And the reason, I think, is that, strangely enough, stupidly enough, in as long as there is no bloodshed, there is no terror, nothing happens, a bus was not blown, no one feels the urgency. Now, this is something that really kills me. Some people told me, and some people argue with me in Israel, they say, why do you have to hurry now? Wait until there will be terror and there will be buses blown and people will be killed in the streets. Then, everyone will feel the urgency. And I say, you must be crazy. Now, if we will make the initiative, we will move forward, no one will say that Israel is doing it under the pressure of terror, but under the understanding that this is the right thing at the right time for the right sides to do it. Let's do it. Rather than wait until it will become a big turbulence and terror and whatnot. So that's number one. Now, look, I don't want to argue about what was described about from my side, from the Palestinian side. I can say to you one thing. Everything that I proposed is in writing. It even appeared in your paper in a cover story on the New York Times Magazine in February of 2011.
I recall it well.
And everything that is written there is accurate. And the fascinating thing about it is, by the way, that Abu Mazen was interviewed to the same story, and he said everything that Olmert says is correct.
Right.
Of course, he gave all kinds of explanations why he didn't sign it. I don't want to go into this. I read stories, which I don't know whether they're true or not, but I read it in Condi Rice's book, that Israeli ministers came to Abu Mazen and advised him not to accept my peace plan because they said to him, why hurry? Wait until we'll replace him. Then, I don't know if it's true, I don't know if it's not true, I know only one thing. I'm not looking now to find who is guilty for not doing what needed to be done in the past. I'm looking for someone who will have the courage, the determination, the imagination, the creativity to make it now. That's what we need.
Is there a relationship between the Iran question and the Palestine question? In other words, do you think that Netanyahu has entered into these negotiations because the Americans have said to him, we need your help on that, and then you can have our help on that?
I don't know what the Americans told him. They may have told him. I don't know.
Did they ever talk to you in those terms?
If they have told, I will not tell you what they talked to me because of obvious reasons.
Okay.
But I can tell you one thing. If they told him that there is a connection, then they counted on his naivete. Okay? Because there is no connection. There may be, but it is already on ground, we can see it. All of the Sunni moderate Arab countries are on our side on the Iranian issue right now, and it's obvious and it's well known. The Saudis, the Egyptians, Jordan, the Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, you name it, they all are against Iran anyway. So they don't need to say to Israel, listen, it will make it easier. I think that we, not the Palestinians. That is the truth. The problem is that time is running out for us, not for them. You know why? Because if in 10 years' time, the Palestinians in the territories will then be 5 million, I want to see those who will say that they can remain under Israeli control without exercising the basic fundamental human rights and political rights of equality and voting rights in the state of Israel. And if they will not be given these rights, then God forbid what the world will say about Israel and what the world may do about the state of Israel. So time is running, and we want to separate from the Palestinians because we want them to have their state. They are entitled, they are privileged to have their own independent, sovereign state without the presence of foreign forces in their country. And we want that the state of Israel will be recognized as a Jewish, democratic state with recognized borders, so that there will be no question about what are the borders of the state of Israel. This is the most important, the most urgent thing that we need, and I think the rest of the world will take care of. Iran is a major issue, I told you. I don't underestimate the urgency, nor do I disagree with the Prime Minister of Israel, and I can say humbly, okay, in a typical modest Israeli manner, all right, that maybe the government of Israel at a certain time did something about Iran which was quite painful to Iran. Not one time, not 10 times, not 100 times. What? You can use your imagination. And it didn't happen at the time of Netanyahu, although I'm sure that Netanyahu is doing everything that he can do, and I have no criticism whatsoever. And what he does that we don't know about, as we did. So I'm not so naive about Iran. I think that we have to deal with Iran. What I say is this: it will be naive to think that Barack Obama, that David Cameron, that the French, that the Germans, that the Canadians, that the whole world is letting the Iranians misleading them, and they are so dumb and so naive and so immature not to understand what they have to focus on. The fact is that, as I understood, and I read it today in your paper, that one of the clashes was about the reactor in Iraq. Yeah. And in Iraq, the reactor is a plutonic reactor, which is made for one purpose only, an atomic bomb. Right. And that's why the Western forces insist on dissolving this
one last question
reactor. So this is the right approach.
On the Palestinians, disagree. One last question before we move on to another topic.
Yes.
It seems to me that the great challenge of any Israeli government, once you have a deal, is what are you going to do with the tens of thousands of settlers who, I mean, there are hundreds of thousands, but there's some tens of thousands that we can't really imagine staying in their homes.
I'll tell you what I think, number one, needs to be done, what I think, number two, will be accepted by most Israelis, and what I think, number three, is the only message of hope that we can bring forth to the Israeli people that will not only be accepted by the Israelis, but will ultimately be supported by the international community, because this is the real future of the state of Israel. Number one, we have to establish the peace process, the peace agreement, on the basis of the 67 borders. Okay, with swaps of territories. What will be the size of swaps now is unimportant, although I have it in mind. I know exactly what needs to be done. And I think that what I propose and will propose will be the peace treaty that will be signed. Okay?
We'll get to that in a minute.
If we will do that, then we will not need to evacuate from the territories, I think, more than 40,000 people. Not that we will have to move them from where they are now into the swapped areas that will remain part of the state of Israel in the territories in return for the territories that we will give them. And this is the nature of
So
war.
it's still 40,000
And
people.
we will be able to build in those territories, which will remain then part of the
Right.
state of
New
Israel
homes for
legally,
them.
and
Right.
by the acceptance of the entire world, enough for 250,000 people.
Okay.
It's not so big. So there will be in the territories, there will be high
And
rises.
you think it's not unimaginable
And
to
the
move?
rest, they will go to the Negev. The Negev is still empty.
And people are going to move?
And they will be moved because we will give them incentives. And when we will build the fast railway from Tel Aviv to Eilat, which will take an hour to go from Tel Aviv to Eilat, and we'll build another two highways that will, crisscross the Negev, and we will bring all the military camps into the Negev, which will mean moving tens of thousands of families of soldiers into the Negev. And we will give the incentives instead of the territories, which we can't, and which we will not, and which we don't do now because it is out of the game anymore. We'll do it in the Negev. There will be tens of thousands of young Israelis that will be happy to move into the place which is warm, but which is at the same time can be developed into the real Silicon Valley of the State of Israel, the real Silicon Valley not only in high-tech, which characterize the State of Israel, in agriculture, in traditional industries, in high-tech and clean-tech cities, in a wonderful environment which will be protected and developed and which will be the inspiration for tens of thousands of people.
Okay.
I hope that in my lifetime, 1 million Jews will live in the Negev, and when 1 million Jews will live in the Negev, and the rest that were in the territories will be living in territories which are recognized to
Israel.
be part of the State of Israel, then Israel will become the capital of the Middle East. And I want to tell you only one thing. I'm sorry I'm, prolonging it, but I hope that they will be patient. Look, leave aside now all the ideological issues. Okay, leave aside all the moral issues, which are important. I don't want to be in control of 5 million people that can't vote and can't say how they want their country in which they live will look like.
I understand.
I don't want Israel to be there.
Okay.
Because we will lose the support of the world.
So-
But I'm talking about now from economic point of view. If there will be peace between us and the Palestinians, there will be a revolution in the Middle East. Countries like Saudi Arabia, like all of the Arab countries, tens of Arab countries will make peace with Israel. The last reason for not recognizing Israel, even from countries that right now keep good relations with us, underneath, they will come up to the open. There will be tens of billions of investments coming to the State of Israel because it will be a stable democracy and a reliable democracy. And we, together with all these Arab countries, which will become our friends and our partners, we will make a revolution that will change entirely the life of the Middle East and the future of the Middle East. And this is what we need.
Okay. Now, so I think you can all agree with me that Ehud Olmert doesn't sound like a former prime minister at this moment. He sounds like someone on a mission. So let's talk for a few minutes about your legal troubles and your political aspirations. First of all, I'm fascinated by the fact that there have been a lot of cases against people in your position, and Avigdor Lieberman also now, both left and right, and many of them didn't add up to very much. I mean, the cases against you were painful, they drove you from office, and yet essentially you were found to be not guilty in
That's
the
right.
two central things that you were accused of. Well, the Jerusalem real estate issue is ongoing, but the ones that you left for, you were found not guilty. What's the story? Why is it? At one time when you were being forced out, those close to you were saying to people like me, it's political. The right doesn't want Ehud Olmert to cut a deal with the Palestinians. That's why they're driving him out. But They've gone after Avigdor Lieberman, who's well to your right. Is it some out-of-control nature of the judiciary in Israel? What's the story?
Look, there are many things that I feel. Not everything that I feel or I think I'm going to spell out this evening or in the near future, but one day perhaps I'll share it with the public. One thing I can say, Lieberman suffered because of a reason which is not necessarily linked to politics, but which is linked to the perception of a certain section of the Israeli population which is relatively new in the state of Israel. And this is one thing. He suffered for no good reason, and I'm very happy, and I'm very proud of our legal system, of our judges, who have the power of mind, the inner strength, not to be tempted to be populist, but to stick to the law.
But are you proud of the prosecutors who spent 17 years going after him?
I chose my words very carefully.
You did.
I'm proud of our judges. That's number one. I'm proud of our judges, great judges, in different places, different levels. That's number one. Number two, I don't know what made. I know one thing, that a lot of money was collected, including here in America, by right-wing groups, in order to try and force me out of my position. There is one gentleman, I don't want to mention his name, a strange guy, caused a lot of damage to the Jewish cause in America when he thought that he could buy the American presidency, was successful in buying the Israeli leadership because he established a paper which is distributed free, which has become the largest paper in Israel, which gave him an enormous control on the public opinion, and which was established for one purpose, to topple me and bring in another guy. So
this is Sheldon Adelson, whom he's not mentioning.
I don't mention the names. I didn't mention the name, not because I didn't think that they know who he is. I knew that they know who he is.
I'm just checking. Some people in the corners may not know.
No, even those who sit in the corner over there. There were many instances, I don't want to go into this, that prove that there was more than just an objective, honest, legal judgment of the professionals that had to deal with it. As someone was feeding them with information, sometimes false, sometimes entirely inaccurate, sometimes biased, that created a certain momentum against me. So I'm not accusing anyone in the law enforcement forces because they have to do their job, but I certainly accuse those who were after me endlessly. I can only give you one example, and I think it will be sufficient, that one day it was broadcasted on the Israeli television, a conversation between a private detector and someone who was involved in a certain zoning process in Jerusalem. And the guy tells him, listen, but what about the mayor? And he said, I have to tell you something. The mayor was absolutely upfront, honest, straightforward. We have no complaints. So he said to him finally, okay, you know what? If you could provide me with information that will incriminate him, we'll pay you $1 million. The rest is unimportant.
Okay. Now, so you are still fighting your legal battles. You've got one last big one here.
Yeah.
And if you succeed, thank you, you will run again for office? Is that a good, a reasonable guess?
Let's put it this way. The one thing, really, which I feel is the mission of my life in politics. There are many things that needs to be done in the state of Israel. You see, Israel is a very successful country. And in some ways, it is perceived by many countries as a very affluent country because we have a large section of the population which is doing very well because of high tech, because of other things, and it lives better than most Americans live. Believe me, and pay for apartments $30 million, $25 million, $40 million, numbers which are entirely unbelievable, even by the rich Americans, okay? But the revenues of the State of Israel are not divided evenly, they are not divided in a just manner. There are too many kids that live in the State of Israel below the line of poverty.
Sure.
There are too many small cities in the south and in the north which live in terrible conditions. We have to change it, we can change it, we have to change entirely the balance of our budget in a manner which will do good for the people that live in the State of Israel. By the way, peace will be very helpful in this direction, but not only peace, even now we can do it, even now we can take a lot of budget that can be used in order to improve the quality of life of those people. And that is something that needs to be done. But the mission that I see for myself, that will give a certain, that will justify everything that I've been through throughout my political career, is to make peace with the Palestinians and to bring Israel into a new status. If I will believe at the time when the next elections will be around the corner, that I am the only one who can do it, which I do now, by the way, then my answer will be positive. But I'll have to be there in order to decide. If something will happen, which I don't quite see at the moment, that this government will entirely make a dramatic change. By the way, I made a change, for all those that may ask me, how come you, who came to New York, even to 92nd Y, and spoke about the entire unity of Jerusalem and so on and so forth and all the other things, how come you changed your mind? I said, I grew and I became smarter and more mature and more responsible, and I could see the possible ramifications of what will happen to the State of Israel if I'll not do it. And I thank God that I had the courage, and I thank God that I had my wife and my children that helped me to reconsider some of my positions and move forward into a direction which I think is essential, is critical for the future existence of the State of Israel. And if I will think that I may be the only alternative that will push this direction and can achieve it, then of course I will not rid myself of the responsibility to do it.
And that change occurred during that period when you were Deputy Prime Minister with Ariel Sharon, or it started earlier? I feel like that's around
much earlier. It started much earlier. Yes, it started. One day, when you'll have time, go to Princeton. If you'd like to write a book about it, but even if you don't, just, for a good article, talk to the former American ambassador in Israel, who is now a professor.
Dan Kurtz.
Yes, the chair of Daniel Abrams chair in the Princeton University, which was donated by a very generous person.
True.
And he will tell you that he heard from me month before I first spoke publicly about it, about the concept of a unilateral pull-out of Israel from territories.
But months is not years. You
no,
mean he heard it in
no,
04
but of course
something.
it
was
boiled, cooked
you.
in my
Right.
inside me for quite a time. Actually, what happened is, and this is very important that Jews will understand it. Look, I don't think that there is anywhere amongst the Jewish people someone who loves Jerusalem more than I do. I don't say that there are not people that love Jerusalem as much as I do, but no more than I do, okay? No more. And I'm telling you something. Tell me, my friends, is Jabal Mukaber mentioned in the Bible as part of the history-long prayers and yearnings of the Jews to return back to Jerusalem? Why does it have to be part of Jerusalem? Only because in 1967, 3 guys were sitting and drawing a map which had nothing to do with the historical background of the city of Jerusalem to the Jewish people. I can understand you talking about the Wailing Wall. I understand you can talk about the Temple Mount. But what does it have to do with Isawiya, with Shawafat, with Beit Hanina, with Jabal Mukaber, with Anata, with Abu Dis, with all these places where there are 300,000, 400,000 Arabs living there? In 5 years, in 7 years, they will become more than 50% of the city of Jerusalem. And the city of Jerusalem, the center of Jewish history, the city for which we were praying more for than anything place, any other place in the history of the Jewish people, will become a Palestinian city with a Palestinian majority that will elect an Arab mayor, a Palestinian mayor for our city. Is that what we want? Is that what we need? Is this what we were praying for and yearning for all our history? Why is it important? Only because someone drew an artificial line 47 years ago, and then everyone decided that from then on Jabal Mukaber is sacred for Jewish history. I mean, this is ridiculous. And it's time that someone will come and spell it out in the most forthright manner without hesitations so that people will understand.
Okay. Now, some of you have written questions here, and annoyingly, they are very similar to my own questions without any professional training. I don't like that, but here we go. I'm going to ask you some of the questions that are written down here.
I'll be short.
Okay, this is a switch in topics. Ehud. This has to do with the Haredim,
yes,
the ultra-Orthodox. So the question is, will the Haredim serve in the army? And if so, will they get less subsidy from the government? And a second political question is, what are your thoughts about the future of Yair Lapid's party? One at a time.
I understand that Yair Lapid was speaking here, and I understand from people that heard him that he was very, very convincing and very attractive, and I'm not surprised. I am very friendly with Yair. He's very friendly with me. I was his best friend, the best friend of his father, and we keep very close relations. And I think that Yair has a great future. But since he's much younger than me, he will, his future will be realized one day, and I certainly will hope for it because I think that he's bright, honest, genuine, and great Zionist. And, why not? When will it happen? Whether it will happen in the next 4 years or in the next 20 years is a different question. We'll wait and see. That's
Haredim.
number one. The Haredim, look, I know better about the Haredim than the Haredim themselves. For reason that I was the mayor of Jerusalem for 10 years and I dealt with all the different Haredim. I'll never forget. And I said it publicly in the city council meeting in front of all the Haredim. I say to them, you guys, be careful. I'm not going to give any of you a control over the Haredi education in Jerusalem. And if you'll ask me why, I'll tell you why. Because you guys are more divided than any of the non-Haredi communities. Haredi is a general term for everyone that looks different. But there are Gerer Rebbe, and there are Belzer Rebbe, and there are Lubavitchers, and there are Vishnitzer, and there are Chechnos, and everyone. And the Geres, they very much care for Geres education. As far as they are concerned, all the rest of the Haredi education can go to hell. And the same is for everyone. So I said, I'll be the only one who is in charge. Why? Because I care for all of you the same way. And I built more Haredi schools in Jerusalem than ever built in the history of the city of Jerusalem, because my belief was that every child at the age of 6 is entitled to study in the same good school as others. What will they study is something that the Ministry of Education has to take care of, not the mayor. You ask me what? I say they have to study the general studies that will qualify them to live a normal life outside of the yeshivas when they grow up.
But that's not what they're
getting now. And if they will not agree to it, it will have to be forced on them. It will have to be forced on them with wisdom and with the sensitivity that will, on the one hand, at the end of the day, will allow them to change their way of life, and at the same time will not create a civil war in the state of Israel between Haredim and not Haredim. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But it needs to be done without provocative approach by either side. It's not easy. You have to know how to deal with them. You have to know how to deal with the different groups. Of course, you can always say, I don't care, this is the law, everyone has to be equal, we have to do it. What can you say? 60 years ago, Ben Gurion said that every yeshiva bocher who will study in the yeshiva will be exempted from the military service. We started it, and now we complain that the numbers are so big that they can't entertain that status, and we are right, but we have to do it in a smart, careful, responsible manner. We can do it, we'll do it. At the end of the day, the Haredi community will not live the way they live now, or they will not entertain the same privileges that they entertain now on behalf of the public funds that are not given to others and are given to them. It will not continue.
But there are two issues. One is to integrate them into the economy and the educational system. The other is the army, right? That's been a kind of symbolic issue for a lot of people. Do you believe that that's actually going to happen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You think they'll end
there
up
are already Haredim that serve in the army. It will take time. But, it will take time. Okay. Ethan, I'll tell you what, and you lived in Israel not only from 2008. You lived in Israel many years. Yes? So you know a little bit about the state of Israel. Just start the process, and you'll see how in 10 years' time, the yeshivas will number 1/10 of what they number now, because most of the yeshiva bochers are normal human beings. They can't sit there from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight and study all day long. I'm not against it. If there are 2,000 guys that want to do it and are capable of doing it, let them do it. This is part of Jewish tradition. This is part of what makes us different from others. This is part of our uniqueness, and we have to understand it and to allow it to happen. But why do we have to force 8,000 every year that are unable to sit there from 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight and study nothing, only because the alternative is to force them immediately to go to ride in a tank? So you have to do it in a certain sensitive manner. We can do it. Okay. At the end of the day, they will volunteer to the most combat units of the Israeli army. Just wait and see.
Okay. Here's another question. What do you think about Avigdor Lieberman's position in Israel, and what does it say about Israeli society?
Look, what do I think about the Tea Party in America? You know, why do I have to think about everything? I don't have to. Let's put it this way. I'll tell you what. Avigdor Lieberman is a Zionist. At the age of 16, he left his parents, he left his family, and he came to live in Israel. He is a Zionist because he wanted to live in Israel. Unlike some who live in a very comfortable places, I would not mention where, and they love Israel from a distance. No, he came to live in Israel. So number one, I respect him for this. Number two, I disagree entirely with everything that he believes in politically. Number three, in spite of this, when he asked me, I want to join your coalition, I asked him, tell me, what the heck? I mean, what happened to you? Why do you want to join a coalition which you know is standing for positions which are opposite to yours? He said, because I know that you'll have to deal with serious security problems, and I want to be part of the decision-making process on these security problems. I said to him, you know what? I respect your answer. I'll take you in on one condition. You don't make, first of all, you will not be foreign minister, okay? And second, you will not make public statements on sensitive issues before you get my approval. And for a year and a half, he was a member of my cabinet, never said one word which embarrassed me. So, you know, in some ways, he is more decent than those who were part of the cabinet, disagreed with everything that the cabinet did, and never spelled out what they think about it. Mm-hmm.
So this question is also political. It says, why did you move, and you talked about it actually a little bit, so you don't have to go over too much ground here. Why did you move from Likud to the center, to Kadima? And then the second part of the question is, did you make the right choice, and are you sad that Kadima is breaking down. And so I will add to this question, if you do enter politics again, will it be through Kadima?
Number one, think of it. Arik Sharon, who built most of the settlements, was the one that evacuated these settlements. First of all, in 1979 in Sinai, Begin didn't sign the peace agreement. Begin, of blessed memory, a great Jewish leader and a man of great honesty and integrity, pulled out from all of Sinai. Before he decided, he called Arik Sharon and said, will you support the evacuation of all these settlements that you helped build? And he said yes. And then again in 2005, he pulled out 17 settlements from Gush Katif and 3 from the Judea up from Samaria up north, and he is the one that built them. And he changed his mind. You know what? The late Moshe Dayan, who was a great warrior and a great general, and I think a great statesman, I still think so, in spite of everything that has been said and written about him over the years. I knew him, and I think that he was a great guy. He once said, only a donkey doesn't change his mind. Human beings, smart people, are looking at the changing circumstances, and they examine their positions and examine what is right at a certain time, and it may not be the same what was right in another time. And this is perfectly legitimate. So I think that...
Is there a future to Kadima?
My future is... I don't know. First of all, I don't know what my future is.
Okay.
I hope that my future will be good, and I think that the future of Israel will definitely be good.
Okay.
I think that we have to have a major power in the center, and if I return back into politics, I'll build it. I'll build it just as we built Kadima. Kadima will be part of it. I never left Kadima, but we will have to broaden the base much more than we used to in the past, and we'll do it. And I promise you that all this fantasy that the state of Israel is absolutely leaning to the right wing is a mistake, is a perceptual mistake that they will hit back those who are so great believer of it. I'll just give you an example. In 2006, the Likud got 12 seats in the Knesset, and Lieberman got 11 seats. Both of them together got 23 seats, which means that all the rest who joined in later were at least one time, perhaps more in their lives, voted to other parties, and they didn't lose their sense of reality. What I want to say is that it will change again. It will change again. And it is not written in the Bible that Israel has to be made up of extreme fundamentalist right-wingers as the Likud is today.
Here's a question about Hezbollah, the South Lebanon party. It says, do you think Hezbollah is capable of causing major destruction in any future war with Israel, especially in Tel Aviv? And being objective, the questioner asks, how would you describe Hassan Nasrallah?
How can I be objective? I don't like him. I don't think he likes me. I don't think he has better reasons not to like me than I not to like him. I live openly. I go everywhere in the world. I'm not even stopped in any airport. And I can appear in public places. And I speak up my mind, and I don't have to hide. Nasrallah, for the last 7 years, live in a bunker, and as I said before, he knows why. And believe me, he knows why. And his chief of staff, Imad Morania, thought that he is immune. He doesn't think anymore.
That's because he's dead, if those of you who may not have been following that.
Yeah, he lost his life. That is the most neutral term that we can use. He lost his life in the middle of Damascus, where unfortunately some guys that were with him at that time were not touched because of whatever. One day, we have to leave something for our memoirs. So one day we'll explain it. What I want to say is this. Hezbollah does have rockets that can be very harmful and very unpleasant. We are much more powerful. And they know one thing. If they will start shooting into the state of Israel, it will not take us too much time to destroy everything that they possess. And the reason why in the last 7 years they haven't shot even one bullet from one rifle is because they know this. And also because they didn't have enough time to read some of the Israeli papers criticizing me about the war in Lebanon.
Okay, so there are a couple of questions about the Israeli-Palestinian issue and your negotiations with Abu Mazen, which we've gone over a little bit, but so the specific question here is, why didn't Abu Mazen accept the proposal that Israel put forward? And if they refused, then is there any chance for the current negotiations? We've had a version of that conversation, but maybe you'll take one more
let's
slice at it.
just summarize it again. Look, several times on different occasions, Abu Mazen appeared on live broadcasts on Israeli television, and he met with different Israeli groups and international journalists representing the most powerful papers and television networks in the world. And he kept saying, had Olmert stayed another 3 months, another 4 months, there would have been peace between us and them. Now, what does it mean? It means that regardless of what I may think about my proposal, okay, he thought that the margin between us and them at the time that I left was so narrow that it would have required only 3-4 months to close the gap. Okay? So, whatever it was, we were very close, not just according to my judgment, but according to his judgment. And he is the one who said there never was a time where we were so close to conclude a deal. And he said on a live broadcast to Israel, you could have lived already 3 years. He said it a year ago. 3 years in complete peace with us. Why do you miss this opportunity? Now, I want that I will not be misinterpreted. When asked, and if I heard well, you asked me, or if you didn't ask me, you wanted to ask me, or you will ask me. So who is to blame for not having peace? I always say, and I will never change my answer. We made many mistakes. We almost never missed an opportunity to make a big, big mistake. They made more. They are responsible. And at least when I propose to Abu Mazen something that he says we're so close that we could make a deal, he should have been more courageous at that time, and he shouldn't have listened to what some told him and would have gone with it all the way. And had he done that, we would have had peace. There is no question about it, because this is what he says and this is what I say. And therefore I think that the Palestinians should be blamed, but that doesn't rid us of our responsibility to now make every possible effort in order to move forward. And I think that the fact that there are negotiations is good. The fact that in the morning we announced that we will build another 5,000 units in the territories, and at lunchtime we meet with the Palestinians where you don't understand why they are pissed off and why they are unhappy, is something that is hard for me to comprehend. But if we want to make peace, we have to focus on what makes peace. And if they want to make peace, they also have to stop talking about all kinds of things that they know will irritate and will strengthen those who are not prepared to make the necessary concessions. So both sides have to make an additional effort, an exceptional effort. We can do it, we ought to do it, we will do it. The question is when. I hope tomorrow. But if it will not happen tomorrow, it will happen, and there will be peace.
Let me ask you about one issue in your negotiations with Abu Mazen that I would say was most controversial for Jews and Israelis, and that was the idea of Israel not having exclusive rule over the Old City and the Holy Basin, that there was going to be 5 countries that shared in a kind of committee to rule over the most sensitive spots. You think that can work?
Tell me, who controls the Temple Mount today?
Well, I mean, it's over. The Waqf is there officially, but the Israelis walk in whenever they want.
The Israelis control the
Perimeter.
perimeter.
Right, but when they want to go in, they go in.
Okay. So if we will be able to go anytime we want to the Temple Mount, and there will be no sovereignty there, but there will be free access, okay, like there is today, what's so bad about it? If this is one of the conditions for making peace. Now, I am not going to ever give the sovereignty of the Temple Mount with the mosques to anyone else, because I don't think that anyone else deserves to be the sovereign over that place, which has been the most precious place in Jewish history long before it became the site of the mosque, which is the 3rd most important site for the Muslims. Okay?
So those 5
but
countries...
do I have to have a formal sovereignty that will keep this division forever, or can I work it out in a way that will provide free access, that will allow every Jew who wants to go to the Temple Mount to go to the Temple Mount and go around there, and yet at the same time will keep that balance that has existed for 46 years without forcing ourselves and cleaning the Temple Mount and throwing out the Waqf because we had enough brains. Moshe Dayan, the late General Dayan, who was the Minister of Defense at that time, had enough brains to understand that there are certain things that you can keep in your heart and in your mind, but you don't do it. And that's what I propose.
And you think it's right that Jews should not be permitted to pray up there?
Who does not permit Jews to pray there? I'll tell you who.
The arrangement between Israel and the Waqf.
No, the rabbis.
Well, that's one of the reasons that Israel played a role in it. But at the moment, if a Jew tries to go up and stand and move his lips in prayer-like fashion, he will be escorted away by the
By
Waqf.
the Israeli police,
No,
because
by the-
we don't know, because we think, look, I think the Jews should be permitted to pray there. I think at the same time that if praying there becomes a provocative action to emphasize that you guys are not in control and that we can do everything that we want to do, so that we will antagonize you and alienate you and maybe provoke you into some kind of confrontation, then I can understand why we are sensitive about it and they are sensitive about it. And the fact is that the Israeli court many times ruled that Jews will not be allowed in certain dates to go upstairs and pray there. But
No, they're not allowed under any time to go there now to pray.
I am in favor of Jews being allowed to pray there. I am in favor that it will be done within the framework of an arrangement that will not create an unnecessary provocation that will ignite the whole area rather than quieten it down.
We only have a couple of minutes left, and I think I've gone through the questions here. So let me ask you one last question, which would be, what do you want American Jews to do in the name of helping Israel? What is it that they should be doing that they're not doing?
Make Aliyah.
Apart
Make Aliyah.
from
Do
making
what
Aliyah.
Lieberman did and come to Israel and then speak against the government.
Okay. But since we all know that's not going to happen, what would you like American Jews in this country to do to foster the things that you believe in?
Look, I hope that the American Jews will maintain the diversity which has once characterized them, and will not be, they shouldn't be the echo neither of the American government as American citizens and not of the Israeli government as supporters of the state of Israel. They should speak out their mind, they should think, and I don't expect them to think that thinking different from the government of Israel is a betrayal in the interests of the state of Israel. Mm-hmm. That's all. I happen not to be entirely in line with the Israeli government on every issue. Every now and then I permit myself to think differently. And I don't think that I betray the national interests of the state of Israel. So if I can do it as an Israeli citizen, everyone can do it, every Jew can do it, and this is perfectly legitimate. And if they will think like me, it will be even better. But that's up to them. So now the rest, you know, the last thing that I love to talk about is, you know, give us money. You know, let's put it this way. Israel is a successful economy. We are a successful country. We are perhaps more successful than most countries that were established under much more favorable circumstances, more or less at the time that we were established. We went through the most difficult times, the most unbelievable circumstances, and we have emerged as one of the most successful economies and countries in the world, absorbing Jews for so many different countries. I'm so proud of what Israel has done and of the participation of the Jewish people in this effort, Jewish people from countries where they were not forced to live, but they could help with the means and the influence and the revenues that they have collected individually and collectively. And so I don't want to talk about money. I do want to say one thing, and this is very important. There are many times that we in the state of Israel feel responsibility, not just for ourselves, but for every Jew everywhere he may be. Why? Because this is the raison d'etre of the state of Israel. This is what is different now from what it was 70 years ago. Had there been a state of Israel 70 years ago, we wouldn't have gone through all the miseries and the terrible pains that we went through in the Second World War. I'm sure about it. So we have to make sure that there is a strong Jewish democratic state of Israel, and everyone that is capable of helping this in his own way is doing the right thing. And that's what I expect.
Ehud Olmert, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.